a few comments about the webinar and about what you can expect from us today. The topic is dealing with demurrage and detention. Why? For two reasons. Mainly with Harish Manadia. He's not only the author of Shipping and Freight Resource, the famous blog. I'm 100% sure that you have come across one of his articles in the last years. He published, I don't know the exact number, but more than 10 blog posts on demurrage and detention. He is the managing director of Diamond Shipping in South Africa. So he has by far more knowledge on the topic than I have. Harish will be speaking at the Digital Container Summit, an online virtual event on September the 3rd, organized by us at Container Exchange. The DCS, it will be similar to the Zoom session here, but it will be 10 times better. Not only by the content, we will also have keynote sessions and workshops, for instance, by Harish, but also from guys at Uber Freight, Hapag-Lloyd, Freighters, Drury, for instance. But what makes the DCS truly special is the networking sessions. Right after this session, we have a 5, 10, 15-minute Q&A. But at the Digital Container Summit, you can actually schedule networking sessions with other participants in advance. So you can grow your network, get to know other people in the industry, and have some fun. Yeah, despite
Flo, I still can't hear you.
Okay, but other people can hear me. That's a maybe you change the audio settings on your laptop. But wait 1 second, guys, before we. Now I can hear you again. Okay. At least we can hear Harish. That's a good news.
Yes, I can hear you guys now.
Perfect. So welcome, Harish. Welcome, everyone. I just gave everyone a quick intro in, especially about you, Harish, about what you do, about Shipping and Freight Resource, about your keynote at the Digital Container Summit, and one short note about your experience with Demurrage and Detention as a blogger, but also as the managing director of Diamond Shipping. Why us at Exchange? We spent quite some time in the last weeks to come up with a research report on demurrage and detention. We actually put together, sometimes manually, sometimes through scraping technologies, like all publicly available demurrage and detention data, put it into a database, analyzed it, and came up with a calculator and a research report. I'm going to explain more about it later on. But first of all, it will be Harish who starts. He will cover like the background, what is demurrage and detention. He will cover definitions. He will also cover a few drivers for why demurrage and detention charges get so expensive quickly. Then he will talk about the different perspectives on demurrage and detention, especially those from freight forwarders and carriers. And then, especially now, the impact of COVID-19 on these demurrage and detention charges. More than happy if you have questions, use the chat. And afterwards, I will show you what we found out in our report. Without further ado, Harish, over to you. Background, demurrage and detention, what is it? What drives it? Stage is all yours.
Thank you, Flo, and welcome to everyone to this webinar on Demurrage and Detention by Container Exchange. Glad to have that opportunity to connect with all of you and discuss this very critical and important issue for container customers. Demurrage is said to be a derivative of a French word, and it basically means to delay or to make things late. So in container terminology, it applies when the customer does not or cannot take delivery of the cargo for a certain period. So as long as it depends on different countries, but the general definition is what I'm giving. Because in certain countries, demurrage and detention are one charge, or it can be a combined demurrage and detention charge. In some countries, they just call it detention. Some countries only demurrage. So there's a lot of variance in terminology as well, in like many things in shipping. But if you look at the textbook definition or the general definition, demurrage is the charge applicable till the container is picked up by the customer in order to unpack it. And so if a container arrives on a certain day and the customer takes, say for example, 10 days to pick up the full container and take it to their premises to unpack it, demurrage can be applicable on those 10 days. But sorry, there's some disturbance. But along with demurrage, there is also a concept called free days, where the shipping line allows a certain number of free days to the customer in order to be able to do their documentation and clearance and stuff. So anything after that free day. So in this 10-day example, if from the date of discharge till the pickup of the container, if they had 10 days, and the customer has 7 free days from the shipping line, then the shipping line will charge them demurrage for 3 days. So that makes the total of 10 days. Now, detention, on the other hand, is an act of detaining the container. The customer could take the container out from the port, take it to their warehouse, and maybe they are unable to unpack it for whatever reasons. So they have to wait till they're able to unpack the container and return the empty container. So from the time they pick up the full container till the time they return the empty container back to the nominated shipping line's depot, that is called detention. So in a lot of cases, though, these two charges could be the same. Means in terms of quantum, it would be $25 a day or $30 a day, depending on the country and the line and many different factors. But these are this is the general definition of demurrage and detention. Now, demurrage can happen due to various reasons. The main driver of demurrage would be documentation, such as receipt of a bill of lading, or customer does not have the original documentation from the shipper in order to do the clearance in time, or the vessel arrival information has not been communicated to the customer by the shipping line, or they themselves do not follow up. And because they did not arrive, they did not know that the vessel had arrived, the container has been discharged and sitting there in the port. Or there are other issues, like the current hot issue that is going on is COVID. So because of the business disruptions, demurrage can occur because of that as well. And detention is also a case like that, in the sense that customer may not be aware of what is their time limit or when their free days expire. Some people have assumed that the free days are up to the collection of the container, or they don't know if it is up to the return of the empty. So there's some confusion there also in practical experience, what I've seen. Or some customers might be using third-party service providers, and they let the third-party service provider do everything and they forget about it. But the third-party service provider might not have returned the container in time, which means that the consignee or the importer will still be liable to the shipping line for the payment of detention. So these are the basic examples of some demurrage and detention and the basic background. And these two charges are separate to the port storage charges, which is yet another charge, but that is in a lot of the countries, it is charged by the port directly to the customer, or that is in some cases it is charged by the port to the line, and the line has to collect from the customer. So these are 3 different charges occurring in 3 different stages, and it can occur both on the inbound and outbound, meaning export and import. On the export side, it could be more detention because customer might be packing the container at a far off destination. So they have to have enough free days to move the empties to the packing area, get it packed, and bring it back to port within that period. So that is how demurrage and detention works, or the background of that. So now, this affects both sides. I mean, if you think forwarders or the customers on one side and the carriers on the other side, it can affect both parties, because the carriers, what a lot of customers don't realize at some stage is that the carriers have a cost factor involved, because not all carriers are using their own containers. They might be leasing containers from somebody else. So they have no shipping line in the world has or operates with entirely their own entire fleet of containers, or ships for that matter. So they always lease containers from different leasing companies, and they will also have their own pool of containers. But when they have, for either cases, there is a cost involved for the customer, for the carrier, for the maintenance of the containers, for the upkeep of the containers, for the movement of empties, because not all trades are balanced. So in a lot of trades, it is head haul is more than the back haul. So they have to reposition the empties also. So all that, for all that, there is a cost associated with the operation of the container, because like a ship, if the container is not moving, if it is not rotating, the carrier does not make money. So they have to recoup that losses from some way. And that is the basis on which they are charging demurrage or detention, as the case may be. Well, in the case of COVID, for example, carriers also have a problem, because some of the customers could not clear the containers in time, could not unpack the containers in time. So both parties are suffering. And on the same side, for the customers as well, they might have their own issues in terms of release. They don't have funds to clear the container. They don't have storage space to unpack the cargoes. So this is something that affects both the parties commonly. And it is very important that both the parties speak to each other and communicate their requirements. So demurrage and detention can be avoided. As I mentioned earlier, the COVID-19 has been a game changer, has been many things to many people. There's been massive disruptions all around the world. Businesses are shutting down, businesses are losing revenues. And demurrage and detention is also one key factor where customers have been engaging with the lines and requesting them to give some leniency on the demurrage and detention, because it is neither the line's fault nor the customer's fault that this issue has happened, but it has happened. So demurrage and detention is something that imagine a customer who's shut down due to COVID, and containers sitting there, but cannot take clearance of that, or cannot use the cargo in order to run his business, because business is non-operational at the stage of COVID. And so on top of that, he's expected to pay the demurrage and detention also, because he doesn't have a warehouse to store the goods. There are a lot of customers who might have been operating on just-in-time basis. So they imported the cargoes, but because their plant is not working or their factory is not working, they cannot use that, and they cannot store it anywhere else also. So they have to, unfortunately, use the containers as storage. And there again, the discussion between the customer and the carrier will come. Or there may be some cases where, in the case of exports, they had packed the containers and kept, but the ships didn't call because of blank sailings. Also, again, due to COVID, because there's a lot of blank sailings happening in many trades around the world right now. And COVID, one of the big issues that COVID has also, or the big impacts, is on port congestion. Port congestion has been quite severe in a lot of countries. For example, in Cape Town, for example, now ships are waiting for about 10 days. In Nigeria, ships are apparently waiting for about 30 to 40 days before they berth because of congestion. So these are issues. But of course, as long as the container is in the water, it doesn't affect the demurrage and detention. But once it gets there, port congestion can also cause the containers to sit in the terminal before it is allowed to move out. So there again, demurrage could occur or detention could occur. So these areas are the most affected by COVID. And also there are scenarios where the customer has unpacked the cargo, but he cannot bring it back in time because some depots, even some container depots were even closed. So in a lot of the countries, container depots are overflowing because of the empties coming back. So these are some of the practical issues that COVID has had on demurrage and detention.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Harish. If you guys have questions, just use the chat. I don't see the chat right now, but we can clarify, get back to you, answer them after or at the end of our webinar. Yeah, if you want to hear more from Harish, he will be speaking at the Digital Container Summit. We will send you more information about that afterwards. But now we kind of, I added a screenshot of a Google Doc sheet because in the last, I'd say 8 to 10 weeks, we were quite busy in collecting demurrage and detention data from the biggest shipping lines out there. As you can see, we have now more than 20,000 data points or rows in our database to kind of finally create transparency on demurrage and detention charges. Why? I mean, the answer is super simple. On the right side, you see a real quote that we have received a few months ago when we tested something. But you have all the charges outlined there. It's drayage, port construction fee, port charges, everything's there. But demurrage and detention charges are just a remark. We highlighted it with like red colors here at the bottom of it. Although they are so expensive, and as Harish mentioned, most of the time it's super difficult to impact the total costs because most of the time it's unforeseen. It's a matter of miscommunication, port congestion, and it's a big point that most customers of freight forwarders make, and because they feel it's out of their hands. So we really wanted to create transparency on that, collect data across the world's biggest ports from the 10 biggest shipping lines to provide you with the biggest and only database on demurrage and detention charges. We'll do the same report again next year to kind of see how it developed in 2020. But now I want to directly jump into it with some findings. We'll send you the slides afterwards. We'll send you a link to the report. But this is just a general overview of minimum charges per port and maximum charges. Plus we have an average charge. It's always for a 20 DC container in this graph after 14 days. So this is not total costs, but this is only at day 14 after discharge. At some ports like Busan in South Korea, it's still relatively cheap, with between like $4 and $5 US always. But on in the United States, for instance, in Long Beach and Los Angeles, you pay for one container only at day 14 already more than $200 US. I mean, Harish, you mentioned a few examples in the beginning, but it's easy to understand that it becomes super expensive rather quick. But what we found most interesting, so to say, I mean, you have enough time after the webinar to study the report and use our calculator to find out more. But if you look at Jebel Ali, the example we outlined here, in the center of the slide, that if you compare shipping line, it's not only that you compare different ports, for instance, Hamburg to Antwerp or Rotterdam, but even if you compare different shipping lines within Jebel Ali, you can save up to, in Jebel Ali, it's $15 to $20 per day per container. In other ports, it's way more. So it makes sense from a demurrage and detention perspective to have that transparency and compare shipping lines. Second finding, so to say, is the impact of 3 days. Harish already described the concept of 3 days. Usually after discharge, when importing goods, you have yeah, you have a few days, usually 3 to 4 days, where it's without costs. But we finally, yeah, created transparency that at most ports, there are ports where it's like 4 days on average. I'm not sure if you can see the cursor of my mouse here, but in Hamburg, it's on average 4 days. Oh, sorry, no, it's not even, no, it's Long Beach where it's 4 days here. And then we have other ports like Busan, where it seems like they don't care about it at all because they give you 10 free days. This is only, obviously depends from, like, it's different in Asia compared to the United States. It has to do with the amount of like imports and exports. The overall pricing level also plays certainly a role. But what we really want to outline is why we selected Rotterdam as an example, that there are shipping lines in Rotterdam, although the average is 6.23 days on average. But if you choose, for instance, Maersk, you only have 4.53 days on average across container types. But with Costco, for instance, it's 11 days. So to translate it into numbers, or to give you another example, that means that you can use the container for free for another 6 or 7 days. And if every day costs you, let's assume it's $25 to $30 per container, which is super realistic, that becomes quite expensive. And through comparing different shipping lines across ports, it might also make the decision to choose a shipping line a little bit easier. And we have now released the Demurrage and Detention calculator on our website. Just type it into Google or just go to our website. I'm sure you'll find it. Otherwise, we'll send it to you via email afterwards. But this is really a thing, and that the differences between shipping lines, even at only one port, are in this case 6 to 7 days. So it definitely makes sense. To give you a concrete example, I mean, I mentioned it earlier already, it makes not too much sense to compare South Korea to a port in the United States. But if you're shipping to Europe, it definitely makes sense to compare Rotterdam, Antwerp, and Hamburg, for instance, because all of these ports have like similar hinterland connection, and therefore are somehow comparable. And now if you compare, like if you look at Hamburg, for instance, with an average of 65 US dollar costs after 14 days, this is on average more than $15 more expensive compared to Antwerp, for instance. Like there's a like an order. Hamburg is the most expensive, then Rotterdam and Antwerp. But then if you look at the details, it becomes more tricky because, to give you an example, although Antwerp is the cheapest, if you choose, for instance, H&M in Antwerp, it's still more expensive with like $60, almost $60 per day after 2 weeks, compared to choosing a CMA in Hamburg. Obviously, as a shipper, it's super difficult to compare rates and demurrage and detention charts in the beginning. But with the demurrage and detention calculator on our website, we give you, like we at least enable you to put demurrage and detention charges, or to take them into consideration when you think about who to ship your cargo with, because it can be a huge difference. Yes, if you have no further questions, we can either look up a few ports, look up a few shipping lines in the demurrage and detention calculator together, or we jump directly to the Q&A session. Alexa will moderate the questions if you have some. But before we start, just once again, Harish will also speak at the Digital Container Summit on September the 3rd. And we will send you all information via email, and we would be more than happy to welcome you as well, because it will not only be keynotes, like there will be like interesting, insightful keynotes, but you will have the chance to network with almost 2,000 people in the industry, or at least you can choose from 2,000 people and then have 10, 15 networking sessions on September the 3rd. Yeah, and grow your network, have some fun, learn something, and partake in the only and biggest networking session 2020. If you have questions, reach out. Otherwise, from our side, thank you so much for attending, for listening, and thank you, Harish, for joining us as well. In my words, you're a legend. You know, like you're like a mentor. You know everything in shipping. So yeah, guys, the stage is yours. If you have questions, feel free to yeah.
Shipping is still very open, and no, I don't think there's anybody that can say they know everything. I see one of the other experts also in this field here as a participant.
Yes.
Hello, Jagan. Yeah, so there are a lot of things happening in shipping, and there's
hi, Harish.
many
Thank
things.
you for saying hi.
Hi.
Nice to hear you.
Yes, guys. So now it's the time to unmute your microphones if you have questions. Otherwise, you know how to reach out to Harish or to us directly.
Cedric is asking how to get all average for each port. Is it the average demurrage and detention charge, Cedric?
Hello there. I'm Brigodi. I'm talking about the average of 3 days available for each port, because I think that for the demurrage and detention charges, that's more about the company, the shipping lines. So just to be sure about this average for the port, are they defined by port with the negotiation with the carrier?
Yeah, that's
okay. The port is generally, as I mentioned, what you're referring to, 3 days in port does not cover demurrage. That is for port storage. For example, I'm using the Durban port in South Africa, where the port gives 3 free days for the line or the customer to move the container out of the port and take it to either a private yard or release to the customer. If they don't take it from day 4, there will be port storage charge applicable. But for example, for the same container, demurrage free days could be 7 days, and demurrage is charged by the line, and the port storage is charged by the port. So there are 2 free days. One is demurrage free days and port free days. The port free days could be different in different ports. It depends completely. There is no standard at all. Some ports are 3 days, some ports are 5 days, some are 7. It completely differs. Demurrage, so far what I've seen, the global average is between 5 and 7 days for demurrage, but the port can completely vary. It's completely different.
And to add to that, the data we use to calculate an average is only publicly available data, but you can always negotiate demurrage and detention and also 3 days. So it might be different for every specific individual, so to say. But if you don't negotiate, this is the average, and I will forward you not only the calculator, but kind of the data that we used. So you can drill it down into container types, into shipping lines, to get a broader or bigger picture.
Okay.
We have another question from Matthew Pullen to everyone. He wants to know if you have the information for UK ports, Southampton, Felixstowe, and London Gateway.
Yeah. No. Short answer, no. We looked at the 20 biggest ports, but that's definitely something we could add next year, for instance. But yeah, for now, unfortunately not. Sorry, Matthew.
So, Manish, good afternoon. My name is Anshuman. I am from UAE. It's good that you have portrayed Jebel Ali. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah. So you have portrayed Jebel Ali as, because in Jebel Ali we have normally around 10 days if it is a normal cargo. Now, how about when you consider like most of the shipping lines are at the maximum, they are allowing a detention free of 15 days. So practically, how does it go about? This is what many of my internal management and people have a confusion. Like, see, 10 is anyway given by the port. So is this 10 plus 15, or is it 15 minus 10? So practically, you have 3 days, 5 outside the port. if you are unable to clear within the free days? If you could just clarify that.
As I said, Anshuman, this is the 10 and 15 are two different things offered by two different people. The port does not have anything to do with the line,
Yeah,
and the line's free days. So, for example, in your example, 10 free days in Jabalali is for the port storage. So that 10 free days and the 15 and the 10 days demurrage free days from the 15 given by the line run concurrently.
So practically, outside the port, they have just 5 days left maximum.
Yeah, if they decide to take delivery of the container on the 11th day.
Even there are many stakeholders where they feel, okay, why you are worried about 15? We'll get 10 plus 15. So it's not 10 plus 15. It is 15 minus 10. You have additional 5 days, right?
Yeah, because it is two different people charging for two different things. So those two cannot come together. It's not charged by the same party. That 10 days is anything over 10 days will be charged by the port. Anything over 15 days will be charged by the line. So as long as that container remains in port and full, that 15 free days is the maximum, for example, and anything over 15 days will be charged. And while it is in port for 10 days, it will be charged anything after 10 days. So yes, so to answer your question, for the customer, they literally have 5 free days.
Thank you, Manish. There is one more thing which you have highlighted in your presentation. It's a good presentation that some of the ports, including Busan, where the demurrage charges is, is very cheap. But again, you are cutting down on the, like as you said, in Busan, because we get a lot of exports to Busan and also import out of Busan. You are saying that it is only for 7 days. Can you just come back to the slides, Florin?
I think this one, right?
Yeah. No, not the Rotterdam one, the other one, for the Busan, because we have a lot of shipments from Busan. So you're saying, in Busan, how many free days do they normally give?
Yeah, that's that slide actually. The average is 10.24 days in Busan, 3 days. But then you should use the demurrage calculator to drill that down into import, export, and to between containers.
So on an average, it's around 10 which the port is giving. So we could negotiate the line for at least another 5 more days. So that makes it 15.
But wait a second, it's not that's not port storage, or that's nothing to do with the port. These 10 days are given by the shipping line.
So Harish, if you could just let us know if you have collected from the data particularly from Korea, like do the Korean ports offer normally 10 days or it's less?
I'm not sure about the Korean port specifically, so that needs to be checked.
Okay. But on an average, you have from the data which you have plotted, it's around 10.24.
Yes.
10.24 on an average.
Yeah.
Anyway, valuable insight of it. Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 more questions coming in from the chat. Suhan is asking everyone, in case of water ingress due to master's negligence, is the vessel's responsibility to segregate the wet cargo from fresh cargo? What happens if additional time is required for discharge? Will there be demurrage?
Suhan, as I highlighted, demurrage starts only from the time the container has been discharged. So anything before that, there is no demurrage or detention applicable. But I'm not sure if you are talking about demurrage from a vessel perspective, because that is another definition of demurrage which is not covered here, because this is talking specifically about container shipments only. Demurrage as a concept applies to bulk and break bulk vessels in chartering, but that is not covered here. But to answer this specific question, there will not be any demurrage till the container is discharged and placed on the ground in the seaward. Cedric, I didn't understand what your question. How I can look after extra cost means to avoid extra cost.
It means if I'm the shipper and want to look at the extra cost, because I think that when I got a proposal from the carrier or freight forwarder, it doesn't take into account the demurrage and detention potential one. So I just want to be sure that, or can I maybe avoid or look after, maybe not avoid, but to be sure that this extra cost will not be overcharged.
Okay, this also to clarify, demurrage and detention is not a necessary charge. It's not a mandatory charge. This is an incidental charge. If it happens, there will be cost. If there are no delays, then there's no cost. It's not like a bill of lading fee or a freight rate or a BAF, which is mandatory for each shipment. This is not something that a customer can predict or can cover for, but they can do that if for example, you know, there has been, if you look at your past history of shipments and there has been regular delays at a certain port, for example, because of congestion. For example, if you take Nigeria, a lot of the containers sit there for ages, for days, for even months, and some of them years. So in those kind of ports, you know that there is going to be naturally a delay in you getting the container out. So if you're shipping to those kind of areas, or if you know your business is delayed because of XYZ, and that has happened regularly, then you can discuss with the shipping line and say, okay, I think my shipment will take about 15 days to clear, then they can adjust on the free days. But other than that, if everything is smoothly flowing, this is not a charge that the shipping line can levy directly. It is only an incidental charge.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So basically, you need to know the pattern of your shipments. I mean, on my site, there's a guide to importing for many for beginners. For example, I've written a beginner's guide to importing, where it gives you the whole description, and there's a big discussion about how to avoid these kind of costs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but if we can maybe detect the number of days the container is in each storage zone or things like that, could it be possible to maybe estimate the cost, and just to be sure about what you say?
Yes, because these costs are demurrage detention costs and port charges, for example, are fixed from the shipping line. It doesn't vary. Maybe they change it once in 2 years or once in 3 years, or maybe even once a year. But ports, some of the port tariffs are valid for a year. So for a year, you already know, and these are published figures on the shipping line sites, the demurrage detention charges and the port storage. So if you look at the shipping line that you're using, it says there, whichever shipping line, 7 free days in this port, and this is the port storage, and after 7th free day, what are the daily rates? So all that information is available. So if you know, for example, that you're going to need 10 days, then you can calculate what will be the cost for the 3 days.
Great. Okay.
And this is what we have collected for the biggest 20 ports on our calculator. But if you want to look it up for some other ports, just go to the carrier's shipping to the carrier's website directly.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that.
Do you have any other question?
Nope, that's it. There are no questions on the chat.
Then yeah, if you have questions, reach out to us or Harish directly. At least from our side, thank you so much for attending. Thanks for contributing to the webinar. Thanks for your questions.
It's good to have an introduction, with you. And thanks, Florian, also, and for these wonderful sessions and clarifying these things. I'm with a group, and I'm able to communicate and explain to my people that what is the real fact. It's good. We go through your, articles all over.
Perfect.
Shipping is a very wild industry, as you said. It keeps changing, things keeps moving. It's nothing like you learn it once and you forget it.
Oh.
So we would love to see this kind of sessions moving forward near future.
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, Harish and other experts will have a session at the Digital Container Summit, but we're always planning nice and insightful webinars. And yeah, like just to close the webinar now, we will be looking forward to seeing you guys again at the Digital Container Summit. There will be a discount for you guys, especially for the webinar attendees now. more than happy to answer your questions. Harish will be there. Other great speakers will be there. Networking opportunities. So yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Harish, for joining us as well. As I said, yeah, for me, you are a legend in shipping and freight. And yeah, have a great day, guys, and talk to you soon again.
Thanks for putting it all together, Florian and Alexa. Very well done. Thank you. And thank you to all the attendees as well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.